Welcome back. This is The Learning Curve. I'm Andrea Lucia. I'm with the CBS News Texas investigative team, and I'm here with Lacey Beasley, our lead education reporter here, and Jack Fink from Eye on Politics. And we're here because we are committed to education. We're looking into the issue of school choice, school vouchers, whatever you want to call it. And it's interesting what's going on right now. This isn't going to take effect for a year, but as I've spoken to schools in the area. Right now, they are telling me they are evaluating this program, how it's going to affect them, and they're trying to decide if they're going to accept these vouchers, accept these funds. And Jack, is there anything in the bill that requires them to?
No, I mean, private schools don't have to be a part of this if they don't want to. They'll look it over and figure it out. And this is something that the Texas Comptroller's Office, which is now required to build this entire program from the ground up, they're going to figure out how many schools are going to apply and want to be a part of this, how many parents are going to apply for their students. So this is something that's happening right now. They'll have until June 15th to get this up and running.
Well, and how many seats will be available at private schools? Because as you can imagine, private schools haven't been sitting around half empty waiting for vouchers to come through. They have full classes. I talked to a demographer, one of these guys, Bob Templeton, who for years have been studying how many kids are going to public school. And I asked him about the exodus, like what kind of exodus are we going to see from public schools when private schools have these vouchers? And here's what he had to say.
It's going to take some time for private school to really build the capacity to be able to take more kids. Most private schools that we interview and talk to, they're pretty much full and they don't really have much capacity to add on. So I think when the vouchers are, when they are approved, that it could be 3 to 4 years before we see a significant drop in the enrollment.
That conversation, of course, happened before the passage of the bill. But it's interesting, and I'm really curious how it's going to play out.
I've talked to private schools, talked to two specifically. One is a maybe on accepting vouchers. One is all in.
Yeah.
I've also talked to parents. Parents are having to do the legwork on this. They're researching, figuring out what is best for their students and for their family as a whole when it comes to these prices that we just looked at. It's so expensive for a lot of the average families.
Even if you have the voucher.
Yes, it's not going to cover half, maybe even a quarter of it, depending on what kind of private school you're looking at. So I have some thoughts from parents and schools that we can look at. Carla Balin is against. Greta Alexander is for.
I think it's setting a priority with funding that says a private school student is worth $10,000 to the state and a public school student is worth less than $7,000 to the state. The governor's pushed a lot of rhetoric that says that public schools are failing, public schools are hurting kids, and we're here to kind of just tell some positive stories of what's been happening. I actually have 2 kids in middle school, and they are at different middle schools even within my school district. One, she was built for school. She's, thriving in that environment. It's been really great. The other one was starting to struggle, and we were able to move him to another school that had a deeper fine arts program and a deeper theater program, where he has really just been able to take off and thrive there.
Private school was a must because of my own experience in high school, if I could go back that far. I was pregnant at 17, and by the time I graduated, I was pregnant again. And I was crying out for help. My mom was a single parent, 2 jobs, and trying to get in and talk to her was very hard, but I had no one at school to talk to either. So it was kind of like being in a box, without help. My son, he found drugs in 9th grade. He never recovered, and he died a couple of years ago. Had I had an opportunity with my son, I think things may have been different for him. I think that's the difference for me, to have somebody that's able to pay more attention. And we have some great teachers in public school, but unfortunately, they can't be attentive to everyone when they have 25 or 30 kids in one room.
The average student would receive about $10,000. Do you think that's enough to send a student to private school?
The private school that we attend now is 11. So I think that that's more than enough.
So if it's $11,000, that's great if you happen to have one that's in that range in your backyard. The average one by us is closer to $20,000 to $25,000 a year. And then that does not include activity fees, uniform fees, getting your kid to and from school. Low-income families really rely on public transportation to get their kids to public school right now. And so you're going to have to find a way. And the argument for that is always you can use an ESA or a voucher for transportation. Well, if your tuition is already more than that amount, there's not money left over for that. Unfortunately, I'm just concerned that it's going to end up being a coupon for families that are already in private school, just to cut the cost of what they're already doing, as opposed to offering like a true new choice to other families.
We have this myth that parents that send their kids to private school, are rich. And that's not the case. I'm not rich. I'm $35,000 a year. I cleaned restrooms because it was my choice for my child to have this education. So it's not just rich people that are trying to send their kids to a private environment. There's parents like me that didn't have an opportunity when we were growing up, and we see a better opportunity for our kids.
A lot of private schools are faith-based, and there's a little bit of a debate of should taxpayer dollars go to religious schools. Do you want your kids to learn religion in school?
Yes, I do.
I have a real problem with public dollars going to that. By law, your public schools are not teaching religion, and are open to families of all faiths, all backgrounds, all identities, all kids, all disabilities. My husband teaches in a public school and is a Christian himself. However, that is separate from his teaching identity. So he is not teaching religion, he's teaching math.
It takes a lot of research on the parents' behalf to find if they do have a child with special needs services, they need to research the correct school for them.
That's right.
The best needs for their child if they want a faith-based school.
Yes.
A lot of it falls on the parent to just research.
Exactly.
I wish and I hope that the program primarily helps families who would not otherwise be able to go to private school if that's what they wish. My concern is that a majority of that money is not going to go that way. I'm appreciative that the legislator put a 20% cap on families making over $160,000 accessing it. That cap expires in 2 years.
If we want to really look at what's public schools doing, not all of them, but the ones that are in Fort Worth now, I know everybody's seen the mayor. She's fighting for kids to learn how to read. I know kiddos right now that's getting ready to graduate high school that can't read.
Public and private school leaders still have a lot to figure out when it comes to the impacts of this ESA program and how it could impact their classrooms. Private schools need to decipher the state guidelines if they even choose to accept students with vouchers. Public schools could see a drop in state funding with that drop in enrollment. And I've spent months collecting thoughts from across the board. Here are two leaders within private schools. We have Deborah Hof, who's the headmaster of Selwyn School in Argyle, and Craig Smith, who's the head of school at Trinity Christian Academy in Willow Park. And I also talked to two other leaders within public schools. We have Mark Terry, who's with the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association, and Ryan Calden, who's the CFO of Waxahachie ISD. Right now, the ESA program brings more questions than answers for both sides of the debate.
We're excited about this. I think it's got the potential to do exactly what it is designed to do, and that's provide a private school experience, help provide a private school experience for students who couldn't afford it otherwise.
All of us at private are going to have different opinions. If I'm a for-profit school, that's a different conversation than if I'm a not-for-profit school. So I guess for me, it's a very back and forth kind of thing. Would I consider not taking it? Yeah. Very few, I'm not going to say none, I think it might be none, but very few independent day schools take any state or federal money. And we're not going to take any money if it means that we have to sidestep our mission.
The only academic requirement that I understand that's firm is that we supply testing results, again, from the testing platform that we choose. We supply that to the state for any student who is here on a voucher. So they don't determine what test we would take. There wouldn't be any STAR testing here. We have a different system. There's a lot of incidentals to be aware of, frankly, incidental expenses, from uniforms to trips. We provide a great array of opportunities here, but there are some extra costs involved too. All private schools, I believe, should want is no harm to public schools, because that's where most of the kids are going to go.
Good public schools make good private schools. I would hate to ever see our public schools suffer, because any school that suffers means we all suffer. I think you're going to find that more private schools say no than you think.
Really, it's moving public money to private schools is the way I view it. In fact, the whole word school choice is pretty applicable. It's not parent choice. It is actually the school's choice. They don't necessarily have to tell you why you're not being accepted into the school.
Public education has always been that bellwether within the community that goes out and tries to do what's best for every student that shows up at their doors every day. We take all students, and it is our charge to make sure that all students receive a high quality education. I'm all for giving parents choices. I just think our parents need to be really careful.
When you lose 5 students, that's a significant chunk of money.
With the 6,000 basic allotments, 6,160, Waxahachie's losing $30,000 right there just with 5 students leaving?
Absolutely. In addition to the $1 billion that were set aside for the vouchers that easily could have gone into public education, it may cause us to have to look at reducing the number of staff that we have in certain areas. If we're held to an accountability standard, whether it's student academic performance, whether it's financial management, or any other metric the state wants to use, if it's good enough for public ed who's receiving taxpayer dollars, it should be good enough for private schools.
And I've done home visits at a homeless shelter. Now, that kid is not going to be able to access a private school. There's not going to be the transportation. Even with the voucher, he's not going to be able to afford the tuition for those schools. So I have a fundamental problem with saying that we're going to expand school choice and then limit who can get into a school. If you're going after kids in the neediest areas and they can't afford the tuition, what does it matter?
Well, one of the things I thought was interesting about one of the gentlemen who said about accountability, because the private schools do not have to follow the same rigid guidelines and accountability standards as public schools. And so I asked Republicans about this, and they said it's the parent who's going to have really the ultimate decision here, and the private schools will be held accountable by the parent, because the parent, if they don't like how that school is operating for their student, they can pull them.
But will they have the information that they need?
Well, they'll know how their students are performing.
I want to know how the school is doing before I put my kid in there.
Well, yeah, and that's, again, up to the parent to figure out. And you raised that point earlier. The parents are in control, and they are going to be the ones to figure this out for themselves.
I'll just say, as someone who focuses on data, it can be frustrating when we go into private businesses. It's not as easily available. It's not as easily available to know what's going on inside.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out.
Yeah. I know coming up, I'm going to ask you what you're going to be looking at in the coming year, what you're going to be focused on as this program takes effect. And we'll talk about that coming up.